Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the D Hope podcast. Today, we are so excited to have with us
Yes.
the incomparable Pastor Mark Winslett, who is a husband, he's a father, he's a disciple of the Lord Jesus Christ, and a disciple maker. So, we are just so blessed to have Pastor Mark with us. He is the pastor of Heritage Christian Center in Hueytown. And so if you need a church home or just want to go and visit, you're always welcome at Heritage. And I feel like I
Amen.
can say that because Pastor Mark is one of the most genuine and
Mm-hmm.
welcoming people you'll ever want to meet in your entire life. So just join us while we welcome Pastor Mark.
Yes.
Amen.
So thank you again, Pastor Mark, for your willingness to be here with us. We know that it's going to add a blessing to so many lives that you're speaking with us today. And so we want to talk a lot about this book here. I'm trying to get it into focus. Maybe it'll come into focus, but Becoming a Threat to Addiction, which is a book that Pastor Mark has written that I know personally has it changed my life, but I know it's changed a lot of other people's lives. So I just want to ask you, Pastor Mark, like, what was the motivation for you to write this book?
Wow. So thank you for those kind words and for this opportunity. It's an honor to be with you and to be speaking to your audience. And Becoming a Threat to Addiction was one of those books that took a long time to assemble because I started asking a question over 30 years ago. Why is addiction recovery so hard? So many talented, educated, determined, committed people. When's the last time, you know, someone in the audience that doesn't understand addiction from at least a personal experience, when's the last time you've went and checked yourself into some place to live for 12 months and, to try to fix a problem in your life, so it's,
Yeah.
I mean,
It just doesn't happen
people
often.
who are
Yeah.
critical and family members who don't understand, they talk about, man, if you just, were more committed or more disciplined. I'm like, well, stop for just a minute and think about some of the things that we've all seen men and women
Mm-hmm.
commit themselves to try to put that problem behind them once and for all. And so the actual underlying theme, the non-spoken title of the book is why do so many people fail at addiction recovery? And so that was the question that I started to ask, why is this so hard? And so I began to make a list many years ago. And second second version of the book, updated edition, there will be a few more chapters added because I'm still learning like all of you. But so that's kind of the backbone of the book is to try to capture why it's so hard, why so many people fail, and give them practical ways to avoid those same pitfalls and mistakes that I've seen a lot of other people make over the years.
Absolutely. So tell us the definition of recovery.
So that's chapter 2, and the Lord has enabled my wife and I to be able to donate hundreds and hundreds of these books to recovery programs. And I tell everyone that I give a copy of the book to us, like I'm giving it to you for free, but I'm asking you to at least read chapter 2 once and chapter 8 twice. Not that the other chapters in the book aren't important, but I believe the number one reason people fail at addiction recovery is they don't know what recovery really is.
Mm-hmm. I
So
agree.
my simple definition is I believe that recovery is something you do. So recovery is what you, God, and others do together to get you to and keep you in your best life. Now, I teach a 45-minute class on that one definition, so I don't want to dominate our whole time with an explanation of where that definition came from and what all is packed into it. But again, chapter 2 in the book, you know, kind of gives the background of how the Lord brought me to that understanding. And then, of course, the other side of that coin, Donna, is chapter 2 begins with all the things that recovery is not, and what
Right.
people sometimes believe about recovery and what they believe to be true about recovery that actually turns out, to not be true. So, but again, recovery is something you do. You can't do it alone. You can't do it without God. And my baseline definition for recovery is regaining something that's been lost or stolen. And
Mhm.
the Lord was teaching me these things. I just sat down with a piece of paper and started making a list of all the things that addiction, costs a person, all the things that addiction steals from them. And after I got through looking at it, finances, careers, I mean, it really just kind of how do you sum all that up in one thing? And again, it's your best life. So we're getting something back. We're taking back what's been lost or stolen, and that, of course, ultimately is our best life, the life God created us to live.
Absolutely. So you are too the director of counseling at the Foundry. So how has being in that environment to like how has that impacted you, and how was that maybe also the a part of the reason for coming up with the book?
Yeah. So I really could spend 10 minutes trying to exaggerate and still not exaggerate, overstate how impactful. Um, Starting with Bill and Michelle Hines, now of course with Micah Andrews and their trust in me and their willingness to allow me to serve there at the Foundry. And it's really been in interacting with men and women in recovery, the questions that they ask, the things that they deal with, and the feedback that I get in my interaction with them that has really helped me better communicate or communicate more effectively the answers that God has given me to people in recovery. So yeah, it's back when I was writing the book, Pastor Bill, he was asking me a lot about it, and I said, Pastor Bill, it's really, the book has taken a long time to develop because it's not just, okay, here's a bunch of things about recovery. There's a lot of wonderful material out there on recovery, a lot of great books about recovery. Uh, I wanted to do something different with becoming a threat to addiction, and have a different approach, and really provide a resource that wasn't like any of the other ones that were out there, but it's so rooted in my personal experience in ministry dating all the way back to 1987, that you know became the finished product, so to speak. So yeah, I can't overstate how much actually being actively involved on for many years on a daily basis with men and women in recovery, that's really made a difference in my life.
Absolutely.
Can you, sorry,
Oh no, go
can
ahead.
you elaborate a little bit more on what recovery is not? So, kind of
Yeah,
what you think, because people all, I mean, I like you said, people fail so much because they don't know what recovery is. And
that's
so,
I'd
if
love
you can
to.
identify what it's not, then that will help you on your
Sure.
path.
Mhm.
So in the book, you take the word addiction, then recovery, which starts with RE. And we have a long list of words that also begin with RE, but do not end in covery. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, for example, remission. And if you look at what remission is, we sometimes think of remission in terms of like cancer treatment and things, but this has to do with the disappearance of symptoms. Regulation. To regulate something means to keep it from exceeding a desired limit. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of folks who are looking at a recovery program to help them better manage,
Mm-hmm.
uh, social drinking and things of this nature. Of
Yeah.
course, all that's, people call it recovery, but that's really not what they're there for and what they're about. But then, and this was a big one for me, a huge one for me, is that recovery is something you do. And I think a lot of people view recovery as something that's done to them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Donna sat across the desk in her experience from a bunch of women over her many years of service who kind of, and I'll try to act it out for you. It's like, okay, give me your best shot. It's like,
Yeah.
and they're expecting
Fix
just
me,
because,
please.
yeah, exactly, and so like I have parents, they say, well, my daughter's in recovery. It's like, well, what does that mean? And a lot of times what they mean by that is that she's in a program.
Mhm.
But just because you're in a program, that doesn't mean you're in recovery. There's a lot of
Right.
people who
Right.
go to
Yeah.
recovery programs that
Yeah.
never even understand what recovery, truly is. So I think, and a big one, I think the low hanging fruit here is thank God for sobriety, but sobriety and recovery, not the same thing. And
Right.
a lot of
Oh,
people
I'm
get
so glad
confused
you
by
said
that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. They
Yeah.
think, okay, I've been clean now for 90 days. Okay. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. But recovery, you got to get sober to be able to understand and participate and do recovery, obviously. But a lot of people, this is the thing that I say over and over and over again. Matter of fact, I've been known to hand out cash to people who can answer this question for me in class. Um, but how you define recovery determines two very important things. Okay. How you define it, not how I define it, not how the program you're a part of defines it, not how your mama defines it, how you define it personally. Okay. That's why it's so important that we get it right. How you define recovery determines two very important things. It determines how you go about it, and
Mm-hmm.
it determines when you think you've got it. So if you
Mm-hmm.
define recovery as clean urine in a cup for 90 days, you go about that much differently than you go about a permanently transformed life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so that's why, especially, I like to try to teach these things to our participants and other programs that I have the opportunity to minister in. I like to try to get that information to people as early in their recovery journey as possible, because everybody has a preconceived idea, and a lot of times even, and it's actually a chapter in the book. Um, people fail at recovery because they let what they know about recovery keep them from learning what they need to know. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times people come into our program, maybe they've been in our program before or other programs before coming to ours, or this is a second or third time even at the Foundry. And their attitude is, look, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
I just, I know where I messed up. I know what I need to do. I'm sure what you're saying right now is good for somebody, but that doesn't apply to me. And so they're letting even the good things that they understand about recovery keep them from learning the things that they need to know to be successful in recovery. So that's where we try to clear a lot of that up early on in chapter 2 in the book, is to really help people nail down in their own heart. Because once you have that in place, then it prepares you for what you need to do,
Right.
and how long you have to do it for. And so that's one of the 11th false belief. We have 11 false beliefs in the book about things people believe about recovery that aren't true about recovery. And a lot of times I think people come to recovery program and they view recovery program like serving their recovery sentence. It's like,
Hmm.
I've been bad, I relapsed, I used drugs, I
Yeah.
messed up. Now I got to go take my medicine, I got to go take my punishment, I got to go serve my time in a recovery program. And so it's a huge false belief, is that, you know, if you define recovery as something you, God, and others do together to get you to and keep you in your best life,
Mm-hmm.
then it's a false belief to believe recovery is something you only do for a brief period of time.
Yes.
That's a huge one right there, because people come and they think, okay, I'm gonna do recovery in this 6 month program, 90-day program, whatever program they may be in. They view recovery as something they only do for that period of time, as opposed to something that they do for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
Yeah.
as I was just having that part of that conversation, earlier, I'm like, it's this is your life, and
Mm-hmm.
change has to occur, heart wise and mind wise, if it's going to be lasting.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
and you've got to look at it as this is it's the rest of my life, not just this moment in time. And I do say, like, that is so true, that that happens. It's like, oh well, I'm here, It's almost like sometimes people think, well, I come here for 6 months or 3 months or whatever. I'm going to be put in this microwave and now life is just going to be great
Yeah.
and fine. But it's like, how are you going to live beyond here? Are you taking note of how you've changed and what you've changed? Because you have to take note of that for it to be lasting too. And I like one of the in chapter 2, um, let me get to it. Under the recovery maxim, old paths cannot take you to new places.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, like doing what you've always done is not going to get you to that next level. You have to do
Yeah.
different.
I think another big one too, I just kind of felt impressed to mention this, and I don't want to be controversial here, but I think another huge one is people come to a recovery program, and this one sounds true. It's not true, but it sounds true. They believe recovery is simply compliance with the program
Yes.
Yes.
and doing whatever's asked of me. So my counselor asked me to fill out this form, so I filled it out. My counselor asked me to do this. And it's to me the same wrong attitude often applies to 12-step recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because if people just view that, like Donna's saying, is okay, I'm just going to check off these 12 boxes, and that's going to somehow, like you said, put me in a microwave and fix me.
It is
Um,
not.
so, programs give people opportunities to change, but simply complying with a program without doing the hard work. And so I've seen a lot of people substitute just do whatever's asked of me, and somehow I'll magically recover, as opposed to doing what's really necessary
Yes.
for the change,
I
the
think
heart change,
it
and the mind change.
I think it goes back to just finding that root cause. If you don't find that root cause, then you may be able to go through a 30-day, 90-day, even a year-long recovery inpatient, and you may have a little bit of success. Me personally, I know I've done it. But before I got to the Foundry, I'd already been to like four different other treatment facilities prior to the Foundry.
Okay.
And so my life, I would do what I was told. I was always a good client. um, I would do what I was told. I would do, take whatever tools I thought was necessary. I would, back then I would do the 12-step meetings. But there was always something missing. I mean, for me, it was that God, it was that connection of I cannot do anything in my life without God. But when I came to the Foundry, and I was, you probably don't even remember me in your classes because I was always so quiet. But I listened, I read your book. I think I actually read it twice. Um, you might remember Sonia, the long black hair. Um, but we studied your book together. So we read it and we would talk about it, and and have conversations, and and talk about our past experience, but we were hungry for change. But I think those tools like the book, and then Miss Donna, and she talked a lot about false beliefs. And when you can actually get to that root cause, then you can start having long-term recovery. Because other than that, you may have it for a brief period of time, but you're going to start repeating patterns. You know,
Yeah.
Amen.
that's just
Amen.
how
Mhm.
I see it.
Yeah, if you
Yes.
don't know what
Yes.
you've been, what you've been doing, and that's one of the ways that I say it too with people, like know what the root cause is, but also understand what you've gotten rid of what you used to do. Now
Yeah.
let's really focus on what are we doing now to change, because that's what's going to help you in the long run, is if you know that, oh, I replaced that old and now this is the new. So
Mm-hmm.
coming into that, and um I just I like putting the book in people's hands. Like
Yeah.
it
That's
just
good.
I get a sense of
Yeah.
joy in putting the book in people's hands, and giving the responsibility to them too, because like you said, Pastor Mark, like it's it's not going to happen unless they are participating in their actual recovery. So a lot of times I've told people, I'm like, yes, I'm like, the program is really not what you think the program is. I'm like, you're the actual program that needs to be reworked, that needs to be rewired.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm like, think of like, we have tools that can help you to be rewired, but you have to use them. And nobody can do it for you. You have to do it. So I'm like, if you can read, please read and connect with what you're doing, because like I hear something, well, they've done everything we've asked them to do, and I'm like, oh dear Jesus. Like, have we even asked you to do much?
No.
Yeah, it's like, what have we asked you to do? And the fact that you can comply, like I say that too, like, no, I want you to connect with what you're doing, because that's where the difference is going to come in, because you can connect with it. That's when you can change. Without the connection, yeah, you might be able to maintain sobriety for a year or two or even 3, but what happens when that another traumatic event happens? Like,
Yeah, that's good.
are you going to revert back to that old, because you really never got rid of it in the first place?
Yeah.
So I love that on the cover of the book it says is how to eliminate relapse and live your best life, not just prevent it, not just, but
Because
it's
it doesn't have
literally,
to be, a
yes,
relapse doesn't have to be a part of your story. I wish
story.
I could just like tell people that, like, it does not have to be a part of your story. Like, you can get it. Like,
Yes,
don't let that be your story.
yes.
Right.
So I believe that's another false belief, is that it just needs to be prevented. That it not
Yeah.
don't think elimination, just think preventive. So what are your thoughts on that, Pastor Mark?
Well, that's the only reason chapter two is chapter two is because chapter one deals with relapse elimination, and we kind of use a real simple story in that chapter. And by the way, it's hypothetical. I mean, the Holy Spirit gave it to me, but and the idea is that, imagine someone dropping a jug of cooking oil on an aisle in a grocery store, and the staff springing into action and blocking off the aisle, and because again, you trying to prevent someone from slipping and falling. But if you came back 3 weeks later and the aisle was still closed and the oil was still on the floor, you'd be like, well, wait a second, you know, they should clean this up,
Yes.
Instead of just preventing people from going down that aisle again. And, that's, we talk about this, to get into the root and these things. And if we can resolve that with the Lord's help, then, so does relapse prevention have its place in addiction recovery? Absolutely, 1,000% yes. Okay. In the same way that willpower has its place, but it's not the final answer. It's not the final solution. But I believe, and then of course we go on in that chapter to talk about, it's only after we get a really good relapse prevention in place, relapse prevention plan in place with the right accountability, then we're in a position to do the hard work. And so we use the next example is like someone on a high roof, steep roof that's there to put a new roof on or what have you, and they get in a safety harness to protect them should they slip and fall. And that's to me what a relapse prevention plan is about. It's to protect you should you slip and fall. You'll be caught before you hit rock bottom and all these other things, right? But once that roofer is in the harness and knows that if he or she slips and falls, they're going to be okay, now they can work and get the job done with that safety measure in place. And so that's where I believe, relapse prevention belongs in addiction recovery. Sadly, a lot of people see relapse prevention as the be all end all. In other words, that's the end of it. You get to that stage and we send you out the door and, call us if you need us, kind of thing. And no, no, no. Relapse prevention, necessary, but not the final answer at all.
Yeah.
Yes. So how would you explain to someone of the importance of accountability in their recovery process.
Well, one of my pet peeves, and I know you ladies have both heard me say this, but let me remind you, one of my pet peeves is when people try to assign certain disciplines and certain responsibilities to people who have struggled with addiction that really should be a part of every person's life, especially every believer's life. And so
Mhm.
the idea that because someone has struggled with alcoholism or drug addiction, that they somehow need accountability, but someone who has never struggled with those things doesn't need accountability, that that gets Tabasco coming out of my ankles. I mean, that's ooh, that I feel it coming up in me.
Yeah.
That's a
It's
that's
ridiculous.
wrong, right? So again, first and foremost, accountability is we were created to have it.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
cannot succeed in life and have our best life without it. Period. And this quote didn't originate with me. I would give credit if I knew who it did come from, but when I kind of modify it, but this is how I say it. God's been trying your whole life to get you under what you're supposed to be under so he can put you over who and what you're supposed to be over. So
Yeah.
until there's accountability and submission to the authority that God's placed over us, we can never truly function in the position and be over who and what he's created us to be over. So the accountability,
That's good. I agree with that.
it's so important, so
Mhm.
powerful. So um, I mentioned a moment ago, second edition of the book and some extra chapters. When we talk about what you, God, and others do together, obviously God's important, um, and the others are also important. In other words, who those other people are,
Yes.
extremely, extremely important. You gotta surround yourself with people who want the same thing out of life that you want, who are going in the same direction you're going in.
Mhm.
And how many times have we seen people wind back up in our programs or another program, or unfortunately, even more serious circumstances, consequences for their choices than that. And the whole unraveling began by surrounding themselves wrong relationships, not severing ties from their past that they should have severed a long time ago. Um, so that community, the accountability, I know we do it strategically at the Foundry, where we want people to know who those folks are and identify those people before they phase out. But eventually, that should just become a lifestyle,
Mhm.
where we are, we surround ourselves with healthy people that it's not necessarily, okay, your name's on my card and I'm accountable to you. I mean, that's kind of back to the willpower piece where
Yeah.
we have to make a plan while we're thinking straight. Should there come a day when we're not? That's a Michael Dye quote.
Yes.
But eventually it should just come naturally. There's
Mhm.
nowhere is my wife's name on a card that says, I am accountable to Pamela Wilson
Yeah.
Winston. Okay, but
Yes.
obviously that's just part of a healthy life. That we're
Yeah.
accountable to one another and other, people in our lives working out from that inner circle.
Yes, because that's one thing that I used to tell my kids. I'm like, I'm accountable to somebody. I'm like,
Yeah.
somebody needs to know where I am.
Mhm.
I was like, that's just a common thing among people. So that you can, if you wind up needing help, you have it. But
Yeah.
it's relationship. But I remember thinking this earlier on. When I started um on this journey with people of I'm like, we're asking people to be accountable, but number one, they don't even know what that means. And then a lot of them have burned every single bridge that they ever had,
Yeah.
with another human being. So it's like teaching them like it's about relationship, and you have to build that you have to build that, and getting the having the two-way relationship of, okay, I'm having a conversation and I'm asking you to be a part of my support. if I have had the where I've burned all of my bridges. Now I have to build new ones. But building those relationships and knowing how to be friends with a person.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, a lot of times I know when in my earlier life, I never had to make friends. Like that was just something that I never did. I never really made friends. People just like would, start talking to me, and the next thing I know, they're like, this is my friend, and I just go along with it. Like, oh, okay, we're friends. So I didn't, as an adult, I really did not know how to make friends. So I had to learn, how to do that. So that's one of the things where I try to help anybody that I'm like, do you know how, have you ever made friends? Like think about, have you ever had to go, well, no, you know what? I really haven't. And I'm like, well, let's go through a process of learning how to share your life with someone so
Yeah.
that you get comfortable in doing so. And once you get comfortable, it's easier for you to have that relationship with somebody and
Yeah.
learning about yourself too. Like what I've come to understand is a lot of people they haven't paid that much attention to themselves, especially if they've been under, the under addiction. That was a part of it. They were trying not to know who they were, because they didn't like who they thought they were.
Yeah.
But knowing who God made you and accepting who He made you is of the utmost importance, in my opinion. So there's in chapter 4, I believe it is, there's little foxes. Those little
Yeah.
foxes. So,
Yep.
so tell us about the little foxes.
Well, of course, that comes out of the scriptures where the Bible says, catch us the little foxes spoil the vines. And one of the reasons people fail at addiction recovery is they guard against the bigger threats, but ignore the smaller things, and will even use progress that they've made in more threatening areas to their future and their life as an excuse to ignore some of the smaller threats and issues in their life. So the idea behind a vineyard owner, rows and rows of beautiful grapevines, large clusters of grapes, deer and other predators will come in and eat those grapes. So he built a fence around the vineyard to keep out the bigger threats, the larger animals, but ignore the little foxes who couldn't reach the grapes. But of course, what the little fox would do is he would gnaw away at the vine little by little by little by little until the whole vine collapsed, and then he could get to the grapes. And so that's the little foxes spoil the vines. It's one thing to lose some grapes. It's another thing to lose a vine that would have taken maybe 16, 20 years to mature it and develop. So it's things like, Pastor Mark, I know I ought to work on my anger issues, but at least I'm not shooting heroin anymore. Or, I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
a lot of men and women in our programs deal with pornography, and they say, well, you know, at least I'm not getting drunk every night, and so we ignore things in our lives and consider them to be, not that big of a threat to our
Not
sobriety
as
or to our
bad.
recovery. Not as bad, not as
Not
serious.
it's not as bad. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard that quite a
And,
bit.
but it's those things that gradually gnaw away at the progress
Mhm.
that we've made, and if we're not careful, it'll cause the whole thing to collapse. Our best life collapse around us. Um, and so, but how many times, do we have people, they'll say things like, I'm not here to talk about my sexuality. I'm not here to talk about my upbringing. I'm not here to talk about, I'm just going to focus on my addiction. And, again, it's like, that somehow they've convinced themselves that none of these other uh, issues and things in their lives have anything to do with their addiction, when of course we know they have everything to do with it.
Yes, it's like that. So,
Mhm.
well, I don't know why you're here, because that's
Well,
why
that's
you're
just
addicted.
yeah, yeah.
If you
Because
don't want
the
to talk about any of
symptoms.
those, yeah,
Mhm.
those things, we're not going to get anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is like keeping that. I like the title. It's the little fox. It is those things that spoil the vine, and I'm learning more and more that anger is is anger is one of those tricky things where
Mm,
people, a lot of times people don't want to even admit that they are angry. And
mm,
I'm like, that is so dangerous. If you won't
Yeah.
admit, often I'm not mad. Well, your body language is saying something completely different.
Yeah.
And then, that stuff like that, that's one of those foxes that's gonna take you on out if you don't deal with it.
Well, I always say it's a secondary emotion, right? So what's
Mhm.
underneath the anger? And usually it's going to be fear or sadness. So
Yes.
I used to get angry. You know this. I used to get
Yes.
angry all the time. And it was the lack of not being able to control something that I wanted to control at the time. So I would get
Yes.
angry, but really it was just based off of fear.
Yes. And it's so hard for sometimes for people like, oh, well, I'm scared. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
what's gotten you frightened? What
Yeah.
exactly are you scared of, instead of having that uh overshadow of, I'll just be mad.
Yeah.
I'll just
So,
be angry, I'll punch
so
things, I'll do
if we
whatever.
go more below, because we start about so one year down from your, I think it only is the phrase you
Yeah.
want.
Hey, hold on just a minute, Pastor Mark. You were cutting in and out, and I want to hear this.
Okay. I wonder why your default micro is
Did you
changing.
hear it too, Miss Donna?
Yeah, it
Can
was
you hear me now?
choppy, a little breaking up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss it, and it was kind of
Yeah.
like
Okay.
in and out. So I want to hear this.
All right. I believe we cover this in
Okay.
chapter 10, where we talk about the inward hunger of the heart. And um, a lot of people fail at addiction recovery because they try to satisfy the inward hunger of the heart with the outward things of the flesh. And we know what it feels like to be physically hungry, but most people do not recognize inward hunger. The Bible says we have an outward man, outward person, outward woman, inward man, inward woman. And in the same way that our outward man, the body gets hungry, the inward man has to be fed and nourished as well.
Mhm.
And many times, if you remember in the book, we go through this whole list of things. We feel like life's passing me by. We feel like angry and don't know why, these
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. And I just simply try to sum it up this way: dominant negative emotions are one of the greatest signs of inward hunger. Um, and
Mm,
but when we feel that way and don't know why, we're angry, we don't know why. Uh, you know, I'm not disagreeing with you. I believe fear is
Yeah.
certainly an aspect of it, but I believe even if we're going to dig all the way down to the bottom, it's frustration.
Mm-hmm.
mm,
I I ask, probably remember me asking this question: how many in this room are angry and don't know why? And
mm,
those, you know, sometimes 80% of the people in the room will raise their hand. And again, if you look at that, it's the only place in the book that I leave a blank, because this is the way I teach it, and I've taught it for years, is I give people the definition for frustration. And it's, again, the anxiety, the depression, the fear. Um, that's how it manifests in our lives. But if you keep going, the definition of frustration is we have these feelings because of unmet needs and unresolved issues in our lives,
mm,
right?
Yes.
And if you think, here's a shovel, dig in this spot right here, and you'll find the answer. Um, you know, if the answer is not in that hole, the longer you dig, the more frustrated you become, and
mm.
the more
That's good.
hopeless you become,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you got people telling you, no, you just need to dig harder, you just need to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
But the answer is not in that hole, and it's not ever going to be in that hole. But you're going to get very frustrated, you can get very angry, and eventually those dominant negative emotions are going to draw a person into self-medicating to try to find the relief from that.
That's
Um,
good.
Absolutely.
I learned so much about anger from Michael Dye. And I don't know if you know this, Michael Dye went home to be with Jesus in September.
No, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and he was dealing with health issues all those years ago when I went to Seattle, to train under him with a bunch of other folks that week. And but when he talked about anger being a powerful anesthetic,
Hmm.
anger manipulates the same neurochemicals in our body as strong substances,
Yeah.
manipulate. Even more so if you think about it. Someone can be so angry, and this is a story that Michael Dye told, but somebody can be so angry they can be hit in the side of the head with a beer mug and not feel it in the
Feel it.
moment. That's
Hmm.
how powerful an anesthetic anger can be. And so a lot of people's first drug was anger. Um, a young man that's, let's say, you got an 8-year-old boy and his mother is remarried and the stepdaddy uh, abuses her and he doesn't feel like he can do anything about it. So how does he make himself feel powerful and strong? By anger. He sits in his
Hmm.
room and he thinks about killing the man or beating the man up one day. One day I'm gonna be, and he just and what he doesn't realize is that's making him feel better. He's literally, it's an anesthetic to the pain that he's experiencing in his life. And so, but anger will only manipulate those neurochemicals for so long. Um, and so then, everybody talks about gateway drugs. Anger is one of the most
It's the most powerful. Yeah.
unrecognized gateway drugs that there is in our world because it manipulates the same deal. And that's why there's so much drama in recovery programs because people are self-medicating with anger and drama and anxiety. And even if they can't find enough, they'll create it,
Yeah.
you know, because they've made up their
Yeah.
mind I'm not going back to the dope house. So, I try to self-medicate with anger. That's why that A in the faster scale, I know some of your listeners maybe don't know what that is, but is anger. It's because
Mhm.
it's one of those areas in our lives where we're self-medicating without even realizing it by taking a shot of anger. So
Yes. I love that you said that too, Pastor Mark, because early I was
Mhm.
facilitating class this morning and I mentioned that out of the Genesis process, and I asked how many of y'all are within it and have gotten to process 4 where it talks about anger as an anesthetic, and the power that it has, and in the process it talks about how its anger is more powerful than heroin. And when I made mention of that, they were like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "It sounds." I'm like, "It sounds." I say, "But think about it. An emotion that we have is that powerful."
Yeah.
So, like like what you're saying, that's so clear and good. That hey, that was your first um, anesthetic right there was the
yeah,
anger. It was a solution to the pain that you didn't have a solution for. um and like however we've reacted in the past to things, we might still, and if we reacted in anger, that becomes our automatic response. um
Mhm.
and learning what our automatic responses, automatic reactions have been, is I think is very helpful too. um to
So you can change
to
it.
Yeah, because if you don't know what they are,
Yeah.
you're going to continue. If nobody ever points it out to you, maybe like, hey, you seem a little angry, like,
Yeah.
and you might get the pushback initially, but it's like, no, like, look, and being able to explain to somebody how powerful anger can be. And because if we are in anger and we sin, that gives the devil a foothold.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that's not what you don't want him to have any more access to
Yeah.
no,
your life than what he's already had. Um, because he was a murderer from the beginning. And he
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah, like he doesn't get to keep trying to murder you. Um, don't give him that power. But yeah, so I thank you for explaining that to us, Pastor Mark, and just where can people, I know you've got things going on, so we don't want to hold you too long, but would invite you back anytime,
Yeah.
to just share the knowledge. And so excited about part two of Becoming a Threat to Addiction, coming out with some more good knowledge in that. But where can people get the book?
Yeah,
Um,
because I'll post that on here. Is it
Sure.
on
So it's
Amazon?
Amazon Becoming a Threat to Addiction. Mark Winslett is my name. And we, I don't say this to brag, but anyone who would purchase a book, please know any of those proceeds just go back into us being able to donate them
Of course.
to lots of different recovery programs. And so we're excited about what's going on with the book. With the second edition, we also want to develop a workbook.
oh,
And
that's great.
Oh, that's good.
I'm
Uh-oh, you broke up again.
main line. Is that better now?
There. Mhm.
Okay, that's better.
I'm working on a book now. It's the title is Perfected Forever, and it's understanding salvation in the new birth. I feel like a lot of people have been born again, but don't really understand what happened to them when they were. And so I'm excited about that. Hopefully have that out by the first of the year,
All
about
right.
40,000 words into it. So, but once we finish that project, we want to get to the second edition of Becoming a Threat to Addiction and release that with a workbook. I think a lot of recovery programs have asked for that. And again, I don't want to just, I want it to be real. And would you use the word organic at the beginning of this, not
Yes.
just like really corny question or business, something that we and all. And if I felt earlier in the
It's breaking
Hold
up
on.
again.
You're breaking up just a little bit.
I do not know what's going on with this microphone. Can you hear me okay now?
Now you're clear.
It's
Okay,
weird. It
now
keeps
you're
coming up on
better.
my screen that it's anyhow. I mean, I'm not even touching it, but praise God. I have to look into that. When I go back to, I just felt impressed to share this, and if it's okay, we have time.
Oh
But
yeah, absolutely.
on the accountability piece, um, if we look at John the 8th chapter, where there was a group of Jewish worshipers who witnessed Jesus stand up to the religious bullies, and the Bible uses this word "believes." Then Jesus said to those Jews who believed in him, if you continue in my word, you'll be my disciples indeed. You'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free.
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, they were offended by that. A lot of people think that's a happy ending to that, but they were offended by that. They said, we're Abraham's descendants. We've never been in bondage to anyone. Who do you think you are, saying that we would be made free? What's lost in translation, because the Greek language is a more complex language than the English language, what's lost in translation is that there's different nuances in the words that were used. When Jesus said that he would make them free, he was using word.
Oh wait, your mic is it
Oh.
was doing it again.
Yeah.
Man, that's so bizarre. I have no idea what's doing that.
Yeah.
Let me just touch it for a minute and see what's going on here. Okay. I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah.
So I want to push on through this though, because I feel like somebody needs to hear this.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when they said eleutherou, what, let's go back to Jesus. So Jesus said eleutherou, and what that means is free from sin and the punishment and consequences of sin. When they said, we're already free, they said eleutheros, which is a different ending to that very similar word. But eleutheros means, and I'll give you my, nobody's the boss of me.
Okay.
I,
Ah.
we're free to do anything we want to do, anytime we want to do it. And obviously there's some animosity there because, the Roman Empire is, you know, has them under their thumb at this point. But their attitude was, we do whatever we want to do whenever we want to do it. We're not under anybody's, we're free. And
Mhm.
all right, so now let's go to Luke 15. Man had two sons. For some reason, we love to call him the prodigal son. Why not the restored son? Because I think we
Yeah,
identify with him as a prodigal instead of one who's restored.
restored. Yeah.
But so back to the accountability, and of course, freedom is such a critical word in addiction recovery, especially Christ-centered addiction recovery. Um, but how many of our participants view freedom as eleutherose? In other words, I'm free from anybody telling me what to do. People
Yeah.
imagine like they could get to this place in life where they have so much money and they have so much control and have so much this that they have no boss, they have an answer to nobody, do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. And that was, of course, that younger brother, the prodigal son,
Mm-hmm.
right? He left his father's house to go do whatever he wanted to do, not have anybody to answer to, went to faraway country where nobody knew him. He could be whoever he wanted to be, play the big shot, throw the money around, right? Of course, we see where
Yeah.
that landed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have to teach people that accountability is a good thing, and freedom doesn't mean not having anybody to answer to. Right?
Right.
I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
confusion
Is
there.
it there?
Where
Yes.
people think I'm finally going to be free from this place, phase out of this
Yeah.
program, whatever. No, that's not free. That's a perverted understanding of it.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
with us, because it is so important. Because that's one thing the Holy
Because
Spirit
it's
had to
not a
teach me.
destination.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
you're just on the journey. You're
Yeah.
on
yes,
the journey, and
well
just
said.
keep going on that. But that was one of the main things that the Holy Spirit had to teach me early on in my in the development of my relationship with him, um was because I'm like,
Yeah.
I thought about all these rules and stuff that I had to follow, because I really didn't have a good understanding of my freedom in Jesus. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
free in Jesus, but that doesn't, I'm not free just because to just do whatever I want to do. No, I belong to him. And he's the authority in my life. And when I said that I made him Lord and Savior of my life, that's what that meant. That he became that authority. And I would say it this way. I'm like, well, I'm going to always have to answer to somebody. I don't care if I'm the CEO. I'm going to have to answer
Yeah.
to somebody, because I have to answer to God. So that helped me to take away that attitude of, you don't tell me what to do, kind of a deal. But it's, no, I've got to answer to, I'm always going to have to answer to him. So it really does help you to submit to authority, in other areas of your life, when you have that understanding. So yes, absolutely, thank you so much, Pastor Mark. We appreciate your time, you giving
Yeah.
us this
Thank
time.
you.
And of course, we're going to be staying tuned for the new book, and for the revised copy
Yeah.
of Becoming a Threat to Addiction. So come back anytime,
I'd love to.
um, and because you just have so much wisdom to share. And I want the world to know Pastor Mark. I really do.
Yeah.
I want them to know.
I wanted to say thank you. You have such, and I know it's just the Holy Spirit and like, you know, how God works through you. But you're just a teacher, and you do make disciples, and you're full of like wisdom. Like I've learned so much tonight. So it's blessed me. If it doesn't bless anybody else, I'll just play it. But
It's
it's
blessed
really,
us.
it's such a blessing. So you are very much appreciated, and I thank you for coming on and sharing your goodness with us.
It's an honor.
Yes.
It's an honor for sure.
Awesome. Well, all right, guys, that was another wonderful episode of the D Hope podcast. Join us again soon. Bye.